Hey everyone, I am excited to share with you the panel discussion hosted by Courier News, the folks that made the Epstein emails from Congress searchable. They hosted a conference in Washington, D.C. on December 11th, and I was there with a wonderful group of independent journalists and creators in a discussion hosted by old-time newspaper veteran Mark Jacob, formerly of the Chicago Tribune. I'm very excited to share this talk with you. This discussion charged me up.
We're going to experience together an exploration of what media courage looks like under threat and how journalists and creators can protect democracy in practice and inspire action and change. Let's get our next moderator up here. This is Mark Jacob. He is a former and longtime and incredible editor from the Chicago Tribune. He also writes for Courier. He has a Substack that I encourage you all to look at, follow, subscribe, get the emails. It's called Stop the Presses. He'll be moderating and talking about news and politics. You've also authored, what, a dozen books? 10. Well, that's my math degree showing my dozen.
Thanks very much. Come on up, guys. Thanks for being here. I want to introduce the panelists. To my left here is Andrea Chalupa. She is a Brooklyn-based journalist, author, writer-producer of the historical film Mr. Jones, which was super, and host of the podcast Gaslit Nation. Next is Meredith Lynch, who is an LA-based writer and content creator who focuses on the intersection of politics and pop culture. She is the co-creator and co-host of The Moment Live, a woman-led news show that streams across social platforms. Next after that is Brian Beutler, founder and publisher of Off Message, a newsletter about politics. He was formerly editor-in-chief of Crooked Media and senior editor at The New Republic. And last, Jack Cocciarella, who is a progressive political commentator with over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. And Jack covers daily breaking news and is engaging his audience with cultural issues defining our politics. So, yeah, 1 million subscribers, not too shabby. So I'm going to start with a kind of a jump ball question you can all answer, or just, whoever wants to. But here we have kind of broken media. We have a mainstream media that is, I think, is lost to a large extent. And then you have purposeful disinformation further clouding the picture. And so I want to ask you, is there one example of a news outlet or journalist who's cutting through all of this mess to actually deliver truth in these tough, difficult times?
Absolutely. ProPublica.
Yeah. You want to say a little bit more about them?
Well, so nonprofit, worker-owned newsroom, they believe in that whole idea of you can't be neutral in the face of evil. So I've been to some of their fundraisers. I know Jesse Eisinger, the Pulitzer Prize winner, who led their coverage, their investigations into corruption in the Supreme Court. And they're very explicit. Like, their marching orders as a newsroom is moral force,
right.
Moral force. Or CNN and the big sort of giants, they believe that you can't have ethics, you can't have that moral force, or it makes you partisan.
Right. And, well, the interesting thing about them also is that they're completely nonpartisan, but they're still bringing the truth.
It's muckraker journalism.
Right.
It's old-fashioned, traditional.
Right.
Ida Tarbell. Yeah.
Ryan?
I would broaden out from ProPublica to include a number of outlets that I guess I would describe as sort of like, they're like in their digital middle age. They either were digital first, starting in the aughts or the 2010s, or they had a print publication in the past, but then went mostly online. So ProPublica is a great example, but Tech Dirt is doing really good stuff. Mother Jones, TPM. And I think what they all have in common is they're independent and they became comfortable doing reporting online early in the internet's sort of takeover of the media.
Meredith?
I have kind of a more, niche answer. I want to give a shout out to my boy, Don Lemon. I am a proud lemon head. If you know, you know. But, and it's not just Don Lemon. It's also Don Lemon. It's Jim Acosta. All of these folks who who are not in the traditional media anymore, who are really building their own platform. And one of the things that I'll say about Don, because I've decided we're on a first name basis, the thing that I'll say is he truly loves journalism. And that's one of the most amazing things that we're seeing with some of these independent people who are going independent is they have so much more freedom. It's just better journalism.
Yeah, well, I can relate to it too, because when I was Metro editor at the Tribune, there were a lot of things I could not say publicly. And then when I asked for a buyout, got it, and I was liberated, and so suddenly I could, say what I wanted on social media. Jack, do you have any thoughts?
Don's show is also free breakfast if you do his live stream when he's in DC, so I'd say that's a huge plus. I'm surprised no one said Bari Weiss really holding it down. But just because I'm not technically contractually obligated, also shout out, starting a little independent, The Bulwark, doing incredible reporting, expanding their coverage, and much love to my buddy Tim Miller. So if we're
boo Tim.
Don't boo Tim. Don't boo Tim yet.
I have to say, I have a hard time with the Republican media, the sort of never Trumper media, because it's sort of the Reagan Revolution. They're heroes that laid the groundwork for Trump and got us here. I think if they wanted to do a show where they atoned, I would watch that every day.
That would be great. I did want to give a shout out to Courier, because they recognized that instead of doing news and waiting for the audience to come to you, that it was very smart to find underreached or unreached people, and with social media, with Facebook, with TikTok, with Instagram, and get to them where they are instead of expecting irrationally for them to get to you. So some individual questions. Meredith, I want to ask you, in a world of rampant income inequality reaching Marie Antoinette levels, all kinds of news are now political news. How has that changed how you cover culture and celebrity news? How does politics kind of seep in there?
Yeah, I started as a beauty creator. I literally I did beauty videos.
And it shows.
Thank you. Thank you. I did put in the work. I did learn a lot. But no, and then after the midterms, I started to get more into the intersection of pop culture and the political. And it's when I saw Jeff Bezos sitting behind Trump at the inauguration, let's just say there's a reason Lauren Sanchez has me blocked. Yeah. But when you see the intersection of celebrity, because Jeff Bezos is a celebrity, right? Lauren Sanchez is a celebrity now. When you see that intersection happening, these things don't exist in a bubble. The day of the inauguration, Kim Kardashian posted a photo of Melania. I was like, okay, cool. I see you. And unfortunately, a lot of people pay attention to Kim Kardashian. So I have to meet people where they are. And I am not afraid to say hey, let's talk about how, Kim Kardashian was a criminal justice advocate. Anybody remember that? Yeah. Until ICE came to town. Now she's quite quiet. So that intersection is a really great way to bring people in.
Andrea, you've covered, Kremlin propaganda and disinformation, and we're seeing that kind of style of kind of big government disinformation, just kind of in all portions of our media and our lives. What's the similarities, and what do you think we can do to try to cut through that? In Hungary, for example, when Orban would get his pals to buy up media, and in effect you had media capture, where it was really controlled by the government, even if it wasn't owned by the government. That we're seeing that happen here to some extent, and what do we do about that?
Independent media. So my model for survival in America today is Ukraine's world-famous civil society, the journalists, the anti-corruption reformers. These are groups of people, and it's a generational struggle that has just gotten stronger over time. They've had some of their leaders killed in car bombs, beheaded, and they keep going, they keep building, and they just come back even stronger. And they have such a strong philosophy that we all need to now adapt here in the US, and it's called self-reliance. In Ukraine, self-reliance is everything. You don't depend on the government, you depend on yourselves, you depend on your friends. When you visit the nerve center of Ukraine's civil society. It's all the groups of independent media, and then the anti-corruption reformers are down the hall. And they all work together, they all drink together, they all eat lunch together. And it's just what the Ukrainians do in their resistance is they create a giant brain trust. And that's what sustains us. And so what I think is really, really important to understand that when I started in media at Condé Nast Portfolio, we had a fact-checking department, a photo department, a production department, a copy editing department, and you'd had editorial assistants who could book and research your interviews for you. I do all of that myself from my bedroom. I'm a one-woman newsroom. And so in this new sort of shock and awe economic warfare that Trump and Elon Musk have waged against us, with doging us, taking away our very livelihood, our ability to support ourselves, and all this economic crash and anxiety that's growing, and it's all on to us to sustain this in the fight. It's extremely lonely. It's extremely stressful. And so I'm really focused on looking to the Ukrainian model for sustainability. And that is, we have to find each other, we have to reach out to each other, we have to lean on each other, and we have to carry each other. And I promise you, that is the only way through this horrible American individualism of pull yourself up by the bootstraps, be strong, put on a brave face, don't act like you're cracking inside or grieving. It's extremely toxic. Ukrainians, in their revolution of dignity that overthrew the Ukrainian Trump, this total buffoon that loved gold and robbing from the state and enriching his family, Ukrainians came together on the square and they mourned their dead openly. They cried and sobbed openly. They rebuilt from the ashes openly. And so I think that's what we all need to do now is the entire time the four of us were in the green room, it became like an episode of The Office. We were like venting to each other, like, how can I help you? Asking dumb questions. And that's what we need to do. Like all of us in this room, doesn't matter what your lived experience is, like we're now a newsroom for justice and accountability.
Yeah, thanks.
Would it throw things off if I tried to find a touch point between these two answers? Because I think it's Andrea will correct me if I'm wrong,
Andrea.
but
I'll correct you if you're wrong, Andrea.
my understanding of how independent media function in prior, like, authoritarian takeovers is that most of them happened before the internet era. So you had small journals that were maybe allowed to persist. They weren't controlled by the state, and the leaders could point to them and be like, "Look, we have a free press. It's these tiny journals that nobody subscribes to." I think one of the small silver linings about the new digital media age is that every independent journalist or content creator can be a writer and a video producer and a audio producer, and we can exploit algorithms to make sort of salacious things go viral. And so, to the point about inequality, what we're seeing happen now, where you have an administration that's authoritarian, but it's also cutting healthcare so that they can take the savings and give it to rich people for tax cuts, while also hosting Gatsby parties and building a palace ballroom where the White House used to be. You could sort of live stream the new Gilded Age, and that will reach people. People will understand that this dichotomy between taking food out of the mouths of babies and building ballrooms for the president to have corruption parties in, like that kind of independent media will be seen by a lot more people than the independent media of the past in repressive societies.
Yeah, great point.
And the audiences know it. You asked me in the green room, like, what's that relationship like with the audience? How do you grow it? They understand what this project of independent media is, as well as the rest of us. They understand the need for creators to grow, to be able to sustain themselves, to interact with each other, why that's so important. I see a lot of the times when I'm able to land more high-profile interviews, a lot of the comments are about saying, it's fantastic that these elected officials are finally starting to realize what people who have been watching independent media for so long have known, which is this is the lifeblood. This is what we need. And so that engagement with the audience is probably clearer than it's ever been. And I think a lot of creators feel a lot more comfortable asking for support, needing it, and saying it, and making it clear, and saying that we need to be coming together in a greater way to make this project work.
So, Jack, I suspect you're the only member of this panel who was born in this century. So,
a little bit, yeah.
He's still taller than me, though, and I don't
just
really appreciate it.
So I want to ask, you're not imprisoned by this kind of legacy mentality that I was, but I think some things may be lost when you have this kind of this wild west of people in independent media. But so I actually just wanted your view on whether what's happening in independent media with YouTube, with podcasts, with Substack, the whole thing, whether that's a sustainable way to deliver news for the future, or whether that's just kind of a interim stage between the old legacy news and something we don't know that's going to happen next.
I think people, now that we have such an ability to kind of get rid of the gatekeepers, will always want to interact with their people. And I think that more so than institutions. But then you see the kind of, not that I want to give him any credit in this moment, but like Dave Portnoy of a Barstool Sports built out a media apparatus around what it meant to be Dave Portnoy. Bill Simmons did this with The Ringer. You have people who are the kind of essence of what their media company is. And so in that way, the individual can build something bigger. But I think people are going to want to go to their people more and more now that they have this opportunity. So I do think it's sustainable. Hopefully someone can help you with a little bit more of the R&D of going forward. I know what it's like to be the one-person operation. But I think that that's going to be happening more and more. So I always do think that going forward, now that we have this ability to kind of go straight to the source, that it's going to be more prevalent. And as long as we are still comfortable getting 4 hours of sleep, then yes, it will be sustainable. But until that point, which won't be coming soon, then yes.
Yeah. Well, Brian, I wanted to ask a similar question for you, because you have been in various roles with various sized news outlets, and now you're doing a newsletter by yourself, right?
Yes.
And is that sustainable for you and for other people like you? And just how do you think that contributes to the whole news ecosystem, or is it just? I mean, again, the same question is this an interim stage, or is this something that can last?
So it was definitely like a lifeboat for me, and then I sailed it to wherever, and I kind of used my subscribership as a moat, and I can wait out whatever's happening in sort of more traditional media from that safe location, right? So I'm doing okay. I think I would like distinguish between 3 things. Like, how will Brian Beutler do? How will Substack, where my newsletter is housed, do? And then is this something like the newsletter economy can grow into something that supplants the old media economy? I think I will be fine. I don't know about Substack, right? Like, Substack could be bought by Elon Musk and ruined quickly, right? I have no way of knowing. So things that are sort of on my mind are like, how can I make myself more independent still? Should I have my eye on other newsletter companies, or should I create my own sort of gated thing that I run, and every time it crashes, that's on me, but at least it's mine, and it doesn't, Elon Musk will never come to hostile take over my newsletter. To the question of whether what's happening in my space can ever really take over what's kind of collapsing in the background, it's maybe, because, outlets like The Bulwark show that you can kind of recreate magazines and newspapers in the more personalized space of newsletters. And that means you can maybe finance things like investigative reporting, which are very hard to do as a sole proprietor. I know 1 or 2 that, Bradley Balco writes a really good newsletter that's investigative journalism. Marissa Kabas does too, called The Handbasket. But it's really hard to attract subscribers and then say, hey, you got to bear with me for a couple weeks while I report out this really important story. Right. And you're not going to get anything over that period of time. So the economics of the newsletter industry make that kind of journalism really hard. And it's just hard for me to see how you end up with the amount of resources that were once poured into that kind of reporting being equaled on the newsletter side of things.
And I want to say that kind of reporting needs lawyers and legal insurance and fact checkers and sleep
and copy editors. Yes. I worry that sometimes, I write an independent newsletter myself, although I have a good editor at Courier. But I do think that, having been in the daily newspaper business for four decades, I liked it when people would tell me that I was totally wrong and should not do this. They talk me out of my bad ideas. And I do worry that with this independent trend that nobody's talking people out of their bad ideas, but maybe the audience is. What do you think? Jack's shaking his head.
They encourage it. Go back and watch my day one coverage of Charlie Kirk, and they encourage it. Wow, that didn't get enough laughs. So no, I'm in trouble now. If the iPad ladies can have as much fun, so can I. Come on, that's unfair. We love you, Jennifer. But no, they I don't want to say they always encourage it, but I don't know what sometimes you break up investigative reporting versus giving takes on YouTube. Sometimes there's a different idea of what a bad idea is, but that's something that you do kind of work through with the audience. There is a lot of comments. Sometimes some are more easy to read than others, but it is the relationship with the audience to see what they want from you or what they don't, in terms of how much fun you can have sometimes, how angry you can be sometimes, how real you can be sometimes. But as long as you're communicating it, I think there's that level of trust there that's established.
Were they saying it was a bad idea for you because it would be unpredictable or because of audience capture? What bad ideas are you trying to suss out?
Well, I was being more general about it, but I guess I was talking about an article that nobody cares about. You know, that you put a lot of resources in and nobody cares about, which happens in daily newspapering.
Yeah. So one thing that I definitely noticed, having moved from, I've always worked in independent media, but then going solo and doing it on an outlet like Substack, where, you know, you want your work to be rewarded with people deciding to become paying subscribers. And if you put a lot of work into something that's really high quality and it doesn't do the job, it maybe you lose money on it because nobody becomes a paid subscriber, but meanwhile, just through attrition, other people drop off. Then you think to yourself, shouldn't I just be sort of feeding my audience more red meat? And that might be more effective at making more money. And you really just have to have the mental habits to not give into that, at least beyond the point of having a sustainable business model, right? And I do see like a dichotomy on Substack between people who came up as journalists and people who are using Substack as another platform in their influencer careers. Because it's really hard to become an influencer if you came up through journalism, right? Like you're trained to choose your words super carefully, right. And you know, not sort of pop off. Just be very precise about everything that you put out in the world, because if you make a mistake, you could be sued. You got to correct it, etc. And influencers, that's not what they do, right? And now these worlds are sort of colliding. And, you know, where news consumers used to have to develop a certain set of media consumption habits, they're probably going to have to learn to distinguish between people who make content for a living as journalists who've gone independent and people who make content for a living because they're influencers or they're selling a product or whatever else. Right. And it's not always clear.
I want to jump in there. So what you're bringing up is media literacy. And there's a phenomenal organization called MAD, because we're all mad, and it's the Media and Democracy Project. And what they have weekly events, weekly meetups, and all sorts of resources on how to media literacy, how the media works, and how to hold it accountable. So check out MAD. Yeah,
I'm an ally of theirs too. Meredith, I wanted to ask you this question first, since you're from Los Angeles. I thought, with the time left, I wanted to talk about the Warner Brothers, Netflix, Paramount thing and see what you guys thought about that. So Meredith, go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, it's very concerning, right? I mean, Hollywood has already been through so much, and the idea of this, another merger is terrifying. And of course, now what's being thrown around is like, don't worry, I'll turn CNN into Fox News. And I think that's incredibly concerning. And I just think just to the point that we were bringing up before about can mainstream media keep up? And it's like, well, I don't want to watch a town hall of Erica Kirk. And right? I'm sorry, healthcare, there's so many, the economy, there's so many other things, but there is an audience for that. There are people who want to see that. So there are people who want CNN to look like Fox News, because that's, and that's who watches TV too. Unfortunately, that's who's consuming a lot of actual television. But, I think it is incredibly concerning. And what will come out of it though? Will more independent creators come out of it, or are we all just going to start to have complete mistrust? Because that's the other thing. I also find that there's becoming mistrust in journalists who are now independent. They're dealing with that same mistrust. They're getting lumped into mainstream media, which has become like a buzzword. But yeah, it's very concerning. LA is already expensive.
I feel like watching this has made me realize how living in a more corrupt society kind of affects the way we think about everything. Because I think if this was happening a year or two ago, I would be very gung-ho about the idea that this merger should be blocked, right? Like Lena Khan should just go get their ass, and no merger between Netflix and Time Warner, right? But now it's like, do we deal with Netflix, Time Warner, and how it's going to make shows shittier, and movie theaters are going to close down, and we're all going to be worse off as consumers as a result of it, but at least it won't be super corrupt? Or let Paramount do the hostile takeover, and now it's just yet another arm of the Trump right-wing media behemoth. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, I'll take the salad with the crushed glass in it, and I'll eat that because that sounds better than the alternative. And so for that reason, like I have not actually, I've not written really about it. And if like, gun to the head, I would say let the Netflix thing happen. But it's only because I know what's waiting in the wings. Right. If it doesn't.
Right. Any other thoughts?
It's the dumbing down of America.
Yeah.
Well, why is it? Why do you say that?
So that they vote against their own interests and they have an enslaved mentality.
Yeah. No, but why would a sale to the Ellison family be the dumbing down of America? I mean,
they want to.
I have my own answer.
They want to make Toby Keith biopics.
You're not excited about Rush Hour 4?
Actually, I sort of like Rush Hour. I'm kind of a Rush Hour apologist, I've realized.
Pro Rush Hour?
Yeah, I'm a little pro Rush Hour.
Well, okay, I'll just put it to you this way. As a filmmaker, I have to work in Europe because I can't get my films off the ground here, not in a million years. An example of that is like all the Russian money and all the Saudi money that's flooding into Hollywood, flooding into entertainment. I'm going to go old school. The Steele report showed how Putin had his eye on the Russian oligarch kids who are now in America. What are they doing? They're all filmmakers laundering Russian money through Hollywood. A prime example of this is that Cold War volleyball movie, Top Gun, right? The sequel just came out with Tom Cruise. The villain historically is Russia, and the sequel is like some obscure country. Was it Bulgaria? And the reason why is because one of the investors was a top Russian oligarch who way overpaid for one of Trump's mansions in Florida. So yeah, it's more censorship and more dumbing down of America to make America Russia.
Right.
There's so few electeds talking about this, I feel, just because they're afraid to slip up or say it too early or say it too angrily or whatever it may be. Saw a great headline the other day. It was like, Americans hate data centers, when will Democrats? And this is a thing to just talk about. And the corruption is so rampant, you feel like if you're not making a week out of it, then what's the point? Sometimes the one elected Democrat who I think has done a great job just doing straight to camera, Chris Murphy, will talk about every instance of corruption, whether it's a Trump pardon or Don Jr. with his masterful self starting a drone company or glomming onto a drone company. And it hasn't just made us dumber. Why do we have to concern ourselves with this? Like, why is this our reality in which we have to worry about who Donald Trump is helping purchase what to feed you what you don't want, and Netflix is bad, and the angles are sloppy, and the music is AI, and we should just be upset about these things. And we should want people who are just upset about these things. And again, I think that's why, to bring back to a little bit of what it's all about, like why people just kind of want to go to independent creators who are happy to say that. Because there doesn't necessarily need to be a point besides why. Why is this what we're being fed? Why is this what we have to deal with? And that's an okay feeling to have without necessarily knowing why. I feel like the right has done such a great job. Damn it, why am I praising them? But like just taking feelings and making that be the thing that we talk about. And it's really easy for everyone to talk about a feeling. And Donald Trump himself has become that feeling of, oh, I'm disaffected. Oh, they are after me, whoever that might be. And they are actually after us right now. What we consume when we come home and just sit down and want to relax. Now that's being controlled by Larry Ellison. Who wants that? And then he wants to track all your data. And so that doesn't need to be a finer policy point. I think you can just say that sometimes. And it's really disappointing we haven't seen more people do just that.
Well, yeah, actually, you get to the point that I talk about a lot, which is that I don't think that mainstream media gets mad about anything.
No.
And I don't mean emotionally as much as there's no sense of outrage. I mean, the idea that you would have the President of the United States deciding who's going to own a news network or would decide what late night comedy show is going to be canceled, it's unthinkable 10 years ago. So why are we accepting it today? And I just feel like there ought to be more outrage even in mainstream media, but certainly I think it's healthy, as Jack, as you've been pointing out.
More humanity.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, everyone ought to get mad. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. And we've run out of time, and I'm mad about that. But thank you so much.
Everyone watch Network.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks so much.